Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the Reporting Services Futures session. My name is Ciprian Žikic. I'm a Microsoft Regional Director, and I'm the General Manager of a company called Chenisoft from Romania. Just a quick poll before starting. How many of you have attended the Reporting Services session in the auditorium just before lunch? Oh, great, great. So if before lunch we were talking about current problems and solutions for the short and medium term, in this session I'm going to talk about a few issues that are going to be solved in the long term. We're going to talk about some elements that we already do have today, and I'm going to enter in detail related to the integration between SharePoint server and reporting services. And then we are going to take a look to the direction towards which reporting and actually the integration between the Office system and reporting services is going to evolve in the following months and perhaps one or two years. So the, sorry, I have a technical problem here. Can anybody please help me with the clicker? There's something wrong here. Sorry. Yep.
The clicker.
Yep. Okay, great. So we've solved this huge technical problem. Now we can go on to discuss about today's agenda. As you can see, I'm going to start to talk about how we integrate today, what are the most important features that enable us to connect the Office system with reporting services. Then we are going to talk about some future functionality that we get in SQL Server 2008. And finally, we're going to close the discussion with some demos and some examples related to a technology that is called Office Writer that Microsoft acquired from a company called Soft Artisans that enables us to edit, to manage, to consume reporting services reports directly from within Office applications, namely Excel and Word. So we're going to see how that works and what are the expectations for those technologies. Now, when we speak about current state of the art, this is the slide that you've probably seen many, many times, so I'm not going to spend time talking about the slide. The only thing I want to point out is that the offering for BI from Microsoft represents a pretty complete stack today that enables us to go from the data source to the delivery vehicle, which is usually SharePoint. So I'm not going to enter in many, many details because this is a slide that you've probably seen every day. Now, let's take a look to what we have today. And when I say today, I say Office System 2007, namely SharePoint and the Office Clients 2007, and SQL Server 2005, Service Pack 2. This is very, very important, as we will see that in Service Pack 2, there have been some major changes to how reporting services behaves, to how reporting services is managed and deployed. There is also another type of integration with the Office system, namely the export features that we have today in reporting services. As you already know, probably, we can export directly to binary Excel files, and we can export to CSV files. Now, traditionally, exporting to CSV has not been regarded as an Office integration feature. But if you remember from my demo before lunch, many of the functions that we usually use within Excel spreadsheets are much easier to get if we use the CXV export and not the layout preserving Excel renderer. And finally, we do got another piece of integration with Office, namely today we can export information from reporting services and deliver it through the delivery channel, which is the email. So basically, this is the state of the art of today's functionality. So let's dive into the integration between reporting services and SharePoint. Before that, I would like to know how many of you are already using today reporting services in SharePoint integrated mode? Oh, there are only 4 hands, right? So the key point or the turning point is SQL Server 2005 Service Pack 2. Before Service Pack 2, as you can see on my slide, SQL Server 2005 reporting services and SharePoint were 2 complete and 2 distinct entities. Each of them had its own database or set of databases through which it communicated. Reporting services was communicating directly with the metadata database. SharePoint was communicating through the WSS object model. Now, Service Pack 2 for SQL Server brought us 2 major components. One, sorry, this is really not working. Okay, so it brought 2 major components for us. One for reporting services and one for SharePoint. For reporting services, Service Pack 2 brings 3 major models. First of all, introduces the WSS object model into reporting services. Basically, this means that from within reporting services, we do have access to the object model, hence we do have access to SharePoint functionalities. Then we have the security extensions that enables us to communicate with SharePoint, and of course, we need some catalog management stuff, which enables us to manage reports not in the classical way, namely in the metadata database, but directly in SharePoint. And you can tell that there is a huge difference between managing and handling reports that are saved in the tables of the report server's database versus managing reports that are saved in document libraries in SharePoint. On the other hand, we've got 2 other major components on the SharePoint side. The one of them is the report viewer web part, which is an enhanced version of the former web parts that we used that were shipping with SQL Server 2000 and 2005. And finally, we've got a management UI in SharePoint that enables us to do most of the tasks that we are used to do, we were used to be able to do in the management tool of reporting services. And when I say most of the tasks, that's correct, because there are some things that you can't do today with reporting services in SharePoint integrated mode. Perhaps one of the toughest limitations is the lack of data-driven subscriptions. If you run reporting services in SharePoint integration mode, you're not able to define and you're not able to use data-driven subscriptions, which might be for some of you a severe limitation. So let's start and see some actual demos of this integration. I'm going to switch now to my virtual machine. And first of all, let's see where's all this stuff managed. When you install Service Pack 2 for reporting services, what you get is a new option in the reporting services configuration tool that enables you to create a database that is SharePoint integrated. And this is one important observation. when you want to move reporting services from its natural state to SharePoint integrated state, you have to create a new database. So you're not able to migrate settings or informations from the existing database. Now, once you do that, the second thing that you have to install is an add-in for SharePoint that provides you this part in the management section of each SharePoint farm. And this is the reporting services management section, where all you need to do is to set some integration settings specifying to SharePoint which is the URL for the report server, specifying, of course, the authentication mode that you want to use for communicating with that particular service. Then the second step, which I'm not going to do because it's already configured on my machine, is granting database access. When you work with reporting services in SharePoint integrated mode, both reporting services and SharePoint need combined access to their respective databases. So you have to be sure that the accounts, the credentials you use for SharePoint and for reporting services have the right access to the counterpart databases. And I'm underlining this because failure of configuring correctly the accounts, the credentials, is, I think, at the base of over 80% of the problems people encounter when trying to set up reporting services in SharePoint integration mode. And believe me, you can get all sorts of weird errors which at the surface have absolutely nothing to do with credentials problems. So be very careful when you do set this up. And finally, you can specify a set of server defaults that you can use when you work with reports and report models and all the stuff in your environment. That's going to take just a moment to load, because I had to reset IIS. So these are the settings. You can limit the number of snapshots, setting the processing parameters for your report, providing a log for reports, and so on. Now, another important element that you have to take into consideration, what I'm having here is just a simple site collection that I'm going to use for today's demos, is that reporting services integration is a site collection level feature. So if you're familiar with the concept of features in SharePoint, you know that being a site collection level feature, you have to activate reporting services integration for every single site collection that you want to use in integrated mode. So I'm just going to show you quickly how's that done. In site settings, you have a special section for site collection settings, and here you've got the site collection features. And here you can see the report server integration feature, which is already active on my site collection. Okay, so once you've done all the boilerplate work to set up and to make reporting services work correctly in SharePoint, you can start using reporting services. So what I have here is a document library, which is a regular SharePoint document library, but as you can see, it contains RDL files. This means that instead of keeping RDL files in its own metabase, reporting services is keeping the RDL files in document libraries in SharePoint, but is not keeping only the RDL files. If we take a look to another document library, which is called Data Connections, you can see that you also have the data source files. And in addition to RDL files and data source files, you can have report models. So basically, everything that you work with in reporting services gets moved towards SharePoint. What is the way to do this? The way to do this is based, of course, on a common SharePoint technology, which is called the content type. if you take a look here to my report, you can see that I've added 2 new content types. The new content types are made available in reporting services in Service Pack 2 once you install it in integrated mode, so that SharePoint recognizes the RDL and the RDSS files and the report model files and so on. And the proof that SharePoint recognizes these files is that when you click on such a file, for example, product catalog, you can see that you have a bunch of options that enable you to work natively with reports, like setting the data source or managing subscriptions or managing processing options and so on. Now, I've mentioned at the beginning of my talk that we do have a new report viewer web part that enables you to take advantage of all these new functionalities in reporting services. So if I just click to one of these reports, what we're going to see is that basically the rendering, the entire rendering takes place within SharePoint. So this is the way in which you can view reports, you can export reports, and you can work with those reports. So this is, everything is within SharePoint. If you want to have more control or a more detailed control over what happens, you can use the web part, the report viewer web part, within a web part page. And this is what you are seeing right here. I'm having a couple of reports that are actually hosted within the report viewer web part. The report viewer web part knows to handle all the tricky details, all the stuff needed to render correctly the report. And of course, the default rendering mode in SharePoint is the HTML 4.0 rendering mode. So all your reports are going to be rendered in HTML. This doesn't mean that you can't export them, because as you can see, you have here a set of actions, among which you have also the export actions, which enable you basically to do the same things as before. One important observation related to the report viewer web part is that the new report viewer web part is enhanced in a way that it accepts right now or is aware of the report parameters. Previous versions had some problems with report parameters. Think a little bit about the way in which SharePoint works, right? You will usually have some web parts that display your data, display your information, be they reporting services web parts, or be they business data catalog web parts, or even plain XML web parts, whatever. And then you have a set of web parts, which in SharePoint are called filtering web parts, which enable you to send chunks of information to the larger web parts in order to filter the data. All of this is possible because of the web part connections mechanism that is available in SharePoint. So the new version of the report viewer web part is capable of doing this. So let's see it in action. I'm going to edit the page, and I'm going to add a new instance of a report. So I'm going to add here a web part. And from the list of available web parts, I'm going to choose the SQL Server 2005 SQL Server Reporting Services Report Viewer. Once I selected the web part, I can, of course, specify the RDL file, the report that is going to be rendered. So I'm going to just open the tool pane here. Haven't checked out the page, so this is why SharePoint asked me to refresh the page. Once I refresh the page, I'm going to select one of the reports that are already available in my report. Okay, that's going a little bit slower then. expected. Okay, so now I'm selecting the report here, specifying one of the reports that I already have in my report libraries. And you can see here that I can navigate, so basically I can go wherever I want within my SharePoint site collections to select reports that are already published. Now, for this I'm going to select the sales order detail report, and I'm going to click OK. And now the new web part that I just added onto my page is going to display the new information. And you can also see that the web part is aware of the parameters. It offers me a user interface that enables me to provide those parameters. And of course, the report is just a plain report providing a sales order detail. However, if you take a look to this UI, it's kind of weird, and sometimes it's even counterproductive to try to do it this way. So what we can do with this integration in SharePoint, we can use the filtering web parts in order to provide, in a more natural way, the filter values for our integrated SharePoint web part. So what I'm going to do is edit the page again, and now I'm going to add a new filtering web part, and then I'm going to connect the new filtering web part to the report viewer in order, of course, to provide a necessary parameter. So I'm adding the filter here, and I'm going to select one of the available filters. You can see here that SharePoint comes out of the box with quite a bunch of filters. Perhaps the most interesting ones are the analysis services filter, the current user filter, and I'm going to stop just for a minute to talk about the current user filter, because this one's quite interesting. The current user filter is a filter that is usually used in a hidden way in a SharePoint page, enabling your web parts, namely your reports, to get the context in which the entire page is run. And when I say context, you can get, obviously, the name of the Windows account or the Forms Authentication account that was used to access that particular page. This way, you can create interactive pages where, for example, your reports behave differently according to maybe the group of the user accessing them, or maybe the security clearance of the user accessing them, and so on. So these are a few things that you might take into consideration when working with this stuff. Now, I'm going to select the text filter here. And once the text filter appears on my page, the next thing I have to do is to connect the new filter to the report viewer web part. So here's the filter. Let me just open quickly the tool pane in order to get the filter configured. And in the meantime, please note that in this area, in this filter area, we also have a button which is called Apply Filters. Apply Filters is used in a scenario where you don't want the page to post back every time you change one of the filters. So if you add the Apply Filter with web part, this is a distinct web part. If you add this web part, then the filters in that particular area are not going to post back their values anymore. All the values are going to be posted back once you click the Apply Filter button. So this is just a way to avoid multiple postbacks. So I'm going to give a name to this filter, and we're going to name it Sales Order Number. This is the filter that provides the sales order number. And let's put the title SON for our sales order number. Now, once we did that, we're ready to connect the two web parts. And this is done via, again, the user. You can see here the filter is not connected yet. So what I'm going to do is say connections, send filter values to report viewer sales order detail. Now, once I create this connection, you will see that the report actually is going to stop displaying the UI for the parameter. Since we do have only one parameter here, the UI is going to disappear, and the values are going to be provided through the new filter. So you can see here that SharePoint provides you a nice interface to just pair up the connections. And the reason why it does this is because the same web part might accept several types of connections, and the same filter might provide several types of connections. Now, in this particular case, we're talking about only one type of connection. I'm not going to enter into too much detail, but in general, you can have multiple types of connections flowing between these web parts. So you can see here that the sales order number filter is going to be linked to the sales order number filter parameter. I'm clicking finish on this, and right now the two web parts are connected. So what I can do once I publish my page, you can see here that the report already switched, so it's going to ask for the parameters values. So I'm going to provide the same parameter, which is SO 5750. And now I'm going to apply this, and if everything is okay, now my report should render accordingly. And finally, what I'm going to do, of course, is just publish my page and have the final result. So what I tried to show you here is a way in which you can take advantage of the multiple functions you have in SharePoint to enhance the user experience, to enhance the functionality of the reporting services reports that you deliver through SharePoint. Now, there is another interesting thing that comes from, let me just complete this here. So it's 750. Another interesting thing that you have from this is when it comes to delivery channels. If you think about the delivery channels you have in SQL Server 2005 pre-Service Pack 2, out of the box you actually get only two of them. You get the email delivery channel and you get the file share delivery channel. One interesting delivery channel that you get automatically once you integrate reporting services with SharePoint is the SharePoint delivery channel, meaning that you can now deliver either automatically or upon request your reports not only to emails, not only to file shares, but also to SharePoint document libraries. So basically you can automate, if you think about SharePoint as being your central document repository, then it comes only natural that you can perform these types of tasks and perform these types of operations. Going back to our reports library, let's just take a look to a few of the other elements that we have here available. So we have the processing options, we have the subscriptions, and I'm going to enter just a little bit in detail here, because as I mentioned, unfortunately right now, there's no support for data-driven subscriptions. Hopefully, it will make it into Service Pack 1 of SharePoint Server. And you can see here that if you want to, I cannot run a subscription because my report is not configured to run via a subscription. Why is the error here? The reason is the following. If we go back and take a look to my report, which is sales order detail, and go to manage data sources, I can see that my report uses a data source called AdventureWorks, which is a shared data source, right? You can see it here. So if we go back and take a look to the data source, which is located in the data connections library, we can see that the data connection, the data source, asks for a Windows authentication-based credentials. And this is why I cannot define subscriptions on my report, simply because at the time the report is going to run, there will be nobody around to provide the Windows credentials for that particular execution of my report. So what I would need to do here in order to be able to do the subscription, I have to store the credentials in the database. So I can say here, okay, run always with this account, which is, say, my local account on the VPC and the password. And I can click here and say, use as Windows credentials, right? This means that I'm going to use Windows authentication. And then if I go back to my report, sales order detail, and go to manage subscriptions, I'm able now to add a subscription to my report. And you can see here what I was saying is I have Windows file share, I have email, I have a special delivery provider, which is kind of interesting, is the null delivery provider. Basically, it's dropping the resulting report, and I have the SharePoint document library. See here. So if I go to the SharePoint document library, you will see that I'm able to select the library. I'm going to leave the same SharePoint library as the original report, so it's going to be Saturn 81 reports library. And then I have the file name. Let's make some special file name, sales order detail exported, so we can see. I'm going to select the output format, which can be a web archive or Excel or PDF or whatever. For now, I'm going to stick to a web archive. Select override for stuff, and then I'm going to say on a custom schedule. So here I'm going to create a custom schedule, and the schedule is going to run only once, and the start time is going to be, according to my local machine, is going to be 3:03, right, p.m. and running today. Okay, and okay. So if everything's right now, my SQL Server agent has stopped. I'm going to start this SQL Server agent just to make sure that everything works. So I'm going to SQL Server Configuration Manager. I'm going to start a SQL Server agent. And I'm going to program the report to run, and we go on. And at a later moment, we are going to take a look to that report. So start the SQL Server agent. Hopefully it's going to start okay. Okay, so the SQL Server agent has started, and now I can just change again the custom schedule, put a few more minutes there, and maybe 3:05, and run it. Okay, and okay. So basically, from this error, you can also see that behind the scenes, there is a communication going on between SharePoint and SQL Server. The actual execution of the reports is going or is initiated by the SQL Server agent. Of course, communicating via the WSS object model with the server. So we're going to get back to this at the following demo just to check that our report has been published to the right location. Now that we've seen some of the issues related or some of the elements related to SharePoint integration, before going on, I just want to mention a few things, a few caveats that you should avoid. First of all, Reporting Services Service Pack 2005 cannot run side by side in two modes. So an instance of reporting services is going to run either natively or in SharePoint integrated mode. If you want to run it side by side on the same machine, on the same server, what you have to do is install additional instances of reporting services. The configuration is done per instance. However, I repeat, the same instance cannot do the same. When you do the switch, make sure you have exported or you have backed up all your reports, because switching from one to another does not do exports or does not copy automatically reports or settings or whatever. So be very, very careful when you do that. Now, we've seen that integration is rather seamlessly. It works quite well. We've seen that inside SharePoint there is a centralized user interface that enables us to manage and to do all sorts of things with reports, but be aware of the fact that there are some limitations. Namely, one of the most important is the lack of support for data-driven subscriptions. Let's make a step further. Going to SQL Server 2008. The next thing that is going to be available, in addition to the current rendering extension, which is the rendering extension for Excel, we're going to have a new rendering extension for Word. And it's going to behave in the same way when it comes to versions. The version that you get when you export such a file is going to be a version compatible with everything between 2000 and 2007. In other words, it is going to be a binary file, a binary Excel file. And this is a decision that has been made by the product team in order to support all existing installations of the Office system. And this is why we don't get a Word 2007 file exported from this. Now, a part of that, we're going to be able to export any kind of report to the Word format. Exactly like we can export to Excel or we can export to PDF or whatever, we're going to be able to export to that format. There is, however, one big difference. If you take a look today in the industry, you will see lots of solutions that enable you to export reporting services reports to Word. However, all of them are using an exact layouting mechanism. So they are using layouts that make the result as close as possible to the original report. There is a problem with this. It's not a Word document anymore. Because if you have a Word document with all sorts of text boxes and all sorts of floating stuff, it makes it very hard to change anything. It makes it very hard to add anything. So the key thing here is that the export is a table-based layout. Even if using the table-based layout means that you might not preserve completely the original layout of the report. What you get is much more flexibility of editing and actually using the result. So basically you can, suppose you have a list of items that you export in Word, you can just add manually new items in the resulting Word document, or you can do all sorts of other types of editings and formattings and so on. And this is something that is going to be in SQL Server 2008. Most probably, the new CTP that's going and new CTP that is coming is CTP 5. You're going to be able to play with the new Word rendering extensions. Let's make another step and now take a look into the future, right? The title of the talk is Reporting Services Futures. Now, when it comes to Office integration, the future of reporting services is going to lie on this technology. This technology that is called Office Writer. Office Writer is a technology that is available today from a company named Soft Artisans. So you can buy it today and work with it. Microsoft acquired that technology in order to implement it, in order to incorporate it into the next version of, one of the next versions of reporting services. And why am I saying one of the next versions of reporting services? Is because, unfortunately, it looks that it's not going to make it into the RTM of SQL Server 2008. So we're looking here at something that is maybe a couple of months after SQL Server 2008 goes to RTM. Now, when it comes to Office Writer technology, there are lots of scenarios, very interesting scenarios, where we can use this type of technology. Just think today how you approach problems like creating letters to customers, right? You have 5,000 customers, and you have to generate automatically all the letters for those customers. Using Office Writer addresses this particular scenario and addresses it in a quite innovative way, I might say. I'm going to do a demo and I'll show you that. Now, if you think about this feature combined with support from SharePoint for delivering documents, it seems that every time I move my clicker, the slides move. I think it's an advanced clicker, right? Maybe like a YI clicker, whatever. So it enables you to address the scenario of the mass delivery documents. Create the documents and use the power of reporting services to just deliver through delivery channels, maybe via SharePoint, those documents. But probably the most interesting thing that is to be gained from Office Writer is that instead of working in reporting services and exporting to Excel or Word, you're actually working inside Excel and Word and communicate with reporting services. This means that you can basically use all the features of Excel or the features of Word that you are used to, plus functionality that is provided by reporting services. Clearly, the type of documents and the type of reports you're going to get is much more suitable to the end users than the ones you can get by exporting directly from reporting services. So, since we've talked about this, let's see a demo. Now, before starting the demo, I have a disclaimer here. I'm using the pre-alpha or pre-alpha version of the add-in for Excel and Word 2007. So just bear with me if we get some interesting error messages or some interesting problems. Hopefully everything will work just fine. So I'm going to open Excel 2007 with the Office Writer technology installed. If you take a look to the ribbon of Excel, once Excel opens, in addition to the standard tabs on the ribbon that we are used to, we do have an extra tab, which is the tab called Reporting. If you buy today Office Writer from Soft Artisans, it's already supporting Office 2007. But what you get instead of this ribbon, you get a toolbar, right? it doesn't support yet the ribbon. This is why I was saying this is some quite new stuff. And you can see here that you've got a few elements, a few items that you can work with via reporting services, but from Excel. So let's get started. First of all, I'm going to create a new data set. Another disclaimer. Who can tell me what I'm going to use to create a data set? Who can guess? Anybody? Of course, query editor. What else, right? So just bear with me. I'm going to say new query. Say my Excel query. I'm going to have to add a new connection. And this is going to be a test connection I already configured. It just connects to this AdventureWorks database. Now I'm going to add a few tables. So what I want here is from the sales. I want the sales territory. And I want the sales order header. Okay. I'm not going to add any filters. I'm not going to add any sort, but I'm going to view data or edit it in Microsoft Query. So this is the information I've got from the query editor. Now, since I have too much information here for my first demo, I'm going just to delete a few of these items. Getting basically stuck with the region and with the sales amount. I'm having somewhere here. Okay, this is the total due is what I'm looking for. And the rest can just go. Now, what I'm going to add here is for total due. I'm going to do the summing because I want only stuff from centralized per region. And I'm going to add a new criteria here. And I'm going to say for the new criteria that the year of the field, should have selected the field first. It's the sales order header order date. Right, so year of this should be equal to, and now I'm going to define a parameter, year number. Going to add this. Let's provide an initial value like 2003 or whatever. Okay, so now I have my query. I have my data set. I'm going to return to Office Writer Designer. So you can see here, now I have my data set that is created. And guess what? This is a reporting services data set. So what I can do next is the following. Let's just see a few of the fields I have here. Name and sum of total due are the fields that I just prepared for me. So maybe I'm going to have here something like name, and here I'm going to have something like sum. And probably I will have something like, sorry, north, and it's going to be 12, or south going to be 11. Great. So now I can add some Excel stuff. Namely, I'm going to add a pie chart here. Okay. This is the pie chart I've just created. And you can see that all I do here is pure Excel stuff. So I'm just playing around with an Excel document. Now comes the fun part. I'm just going to delete this line. And instead of these values, I'm going to go back to reporting and say insert field. Insert field name and insert field sum of total due. So you can see here that we have a sort of marker, % equals, which is kind of an internal marker that enables Excel to be aware that we're discussing here about a reporting services field, right? So the chart also looks funny, but you will see that once it's populated with data, it's going to look quite okay. So let's preview this. I'm going to click preview. I have to save the RDL file somewhere. So let's name it my first Excel demo. And then the add-in in Excel is contacting the reporting service and is asking me, where do I want to publish the report? I'm going to say, okay, I want to publish it here, and I want to name it my first Excel demo. The report is published, and the fun part is that it's an RDL report. We're going to see immediately that it's an interesting kind of RDL report because it contains in a serialized way the Excel template that was used to create it. So I get all of them in one package, and the package is a reporting services file. The publish was successful, and now, of course, I have to provide the parameter value, which in our case, I'm going to leave it for 2003, it doesn't matter. And now the report is executed on reporting services, results are retrieved, and I get back a brand new Excel document with those results. This is the interesting part and the power of this technology. Instead of doing stuff from outside Excel or Word, I'm able to do stuff from within. So basically what I do is I integrate the concept of an Office document with the concept of a report definition file. And what I get is a quite powerful combination that enables me to work from Office with reporting services. I'm going to close the report view here and show you that you can also do all sorts of other things. Like, for example, say sum, and say this equals sum of these fields, right? I'm using what? I'm using an Excel formula. Now when I preview the report, I'm going to do the same here. Okay, the publish was successful. Run it. Now I have the total, right? So this is a way in which you can combine pure Office functionality, pure Excel functionality with your reporting services functionality. Let's take a look on the server side. So I'm going back here to reports. And I should see here, oh, sorry, in Office reports, I should see here my first Excel demo, which is what? An RDL file. But if I go with the normal renderer and try to render the RDL file, because it's still a normal report, what I get here is the data from the report plus a notification which says me, hey, this report was intended to be rendered with a specialized renderer. So why don't you use that specialized renderer? Other than that, you can clearly see that it behaves like an absolutely normal reporting services report. I also have here a couple of other more elaborate examples. Just going to show them to you, not going to enter in any details. So let's open the report from my computer. I have here the sales order detail, and you can see that this is quite complicated. You can see that it uses a data set, actually uses two data sets, the sales order and the sales order detail with lots of fields here. And when I do this preview, when I do the preview of the report, it's going to publish it, and of course it's going to, it says that it's already there, so I want to overwrite it. The publishing was successful, so providing the parameter, now I'm going to get the full sales order detail report. And this looks kind of nice, right? I'm using the report, but I'm still within my familiar tool, right? Remember the title I put to our session. It's Reporting Services Futures for Information Workers. This is the kind of stuff that us developers on the Reporting Services platform are going to be able to provide to the information workers in our organizations or in our customers' organizations. This is quite interesting. I have also another example here, which includes a chart this time. I'm not going to save the changes, just going to open a new chart. Reporting, open report. It's yearly sales, right? I'm going to preview this. Save it to the report server, actually SharePoint because it's integrated. And this time the salesperson ID, and this is the yearly sales comparison for the specified person. This is a chart-based technology. Questions? Yes, please. No, it's not replacing and is not intending to replace the report builder. It is merely regarded as another way to create RDL reports. So report builder, sorry, the question was if this is going to replace report builder, right? No, it's not going to replace report builder for a very simple reason. Report builder has tons of functions and tons of facilities that are not available in Excel or Word, right? It's just, the idea is getting the right tool to the right kind of person, okay? They're going to exist both. Yes, please.
If the average information worker is able to create these data sets, then why should he bother to publish the design to the report server? I mean, he can access the data. Why don't he just stay in Excel and Word and start printing whatever he wants to print, the charts or the reports?
Yeah, the question is, and an excellent question is, since an information worker is able to do this, why would he or she bother to publish that definition to the report server, right? The answer is very, very simple. And there are a couple of reasons why I would think that it still makes sense to publish on the report server. First of all, remember that reporting services, contrary to what most people think, is not a reporting solution. Reporting services is a reporting platform, and it provides you server-side services which are very powerful. I named just a few of them: caching, programmed execution, right? Report snapshots, and so on. So this is kind of functionality that in a simple report like this, it probably doesn't make sense, a lot sense, right? But when you have the big reports, like the weekly reports or the monthly reports or the yearly reports, where you have to do a lot of data, where you have to query a lot of data, then these server-side functions are going to be very, very useful. The second reason I would think that it still makes sense to publish these is because of reusability. One information worker creates the RDL, publishes it to the server, and all the others are able to use that RDL definition in their own spreadsheets, right? So this is a kind of a collaboration kind of thing that enables you to reuse the work of your colleagues or the works of a consultant, and so on. And finally, the third is related to those scenarios I mentioned before, right? Mass delivery of documents, creating letters to your customers, doing all sorts of stuff that is much easier to do server-side. Generating those documents, sending them, processing them, right, is something that a client application would typically not want to do. Does it answer your question? Okay. Yes, please.
An ideal way to work would be database expert creates a report, data set with Visual Studio, publishes it into reporting, and some information worker just download the report, plays with Excel, and then publish the report with another name. So that so you have, in one sense, people that perform the queries and create data sets, and on the other hand, people that use that data set. Is that correct? Or?
Yes, yes, it is. So it was merely an observation rather than a question, is that, and it was something I mentioned on my slide, this enables you to draw the line between the category of people that's doing data-centric stuff versus the category of people that's doing information worker stuff, right? So a database specialist could create the data set, publish the basic structure of the report on the server, and then information workers are able to reuse those definitions. And it's perfectly correct observation. Yeah, that's one of the reasons. One of the reasons. Yes, please. Okay, so the question is, with the SharePoint delivery extension that we have in Reporting Services Service Pack 2, can we do multiple subscriptions, if is that correct, delivering to multiple locations, I mean. Yes, we can, okay? So you can do it either by creating several subscriptions for different document libraries. What you can do, however, which might be even more interesting, if you want to do some highly specialized type of delivery, for example, remember that being a platform reporting services is extensible. So it takes like maybe a couple of days for a developer, for the average developer, to understand how to write a delivery extension. And then you can enhance the existing delivery extensions. You also have a couple of samples included in SQL Server that show you how to create some more exotic delivery services, the delivery channels. The most interesting one is the one that delivers a report directly to a PCL printer, right? So there are all sorts of interesting things that you can do. Yes, please. So there was two questions. The first one, can you deliver reports rendered with the Office Writer extension? And the second one is that, can these reports be consumed by Excel services? So for the first question, the answer is simply yes, because once you install Office Writer installs two new delivery channels for reporting services. And these are the Word delivery channel and the Excel delivery channel, which are specifically targeted towards creating these documents and delivering them to the destination. Now, for the second question, there is a small problem. Currently, Office Writer creates binary documents that are compatible in format from Office 2000 to 2007. This means that out of the box, such a document, once it's created, it cannot be consumed directly by Excel services. Excel services is limited to the 2007 format, and even for the 2007 format, there are some things that Excel services won't accept, right? So you might need to think about an additional layer to make them compatible with Excel services. It's not going to work out of the box. Yes, please. So the question is, in order to integrate reporting services Service Pack 2 with SharePoint, do you need a SharePoint server, or does it also work with SharePoint services? You need the SharePoint server. Yes, please. The question is, and that's another very interesting question, is how do you control the amount of reports that's going to be generated? I agree, that's a challenge. Because once you put in the hand of information workers such a tool, you might end up with piles of reports on your report servers, right? So most probably by the time that these technology ships, reporting services will also provide some sort or some mechanism to control the amount. As somebody told here, quotas, right? So these things are going to go hand in hand. I'll take one more question now, and then we're going to continue the session. Yes, please. Things work like this. When you try to preview the report, what happens is that the report is executed on the server side, right? And then the resulting data comes back, and the Office Writer add-in that runs in Excel 2007 takes care to integrate the data into the spreadsheet, right? As a matter of fact, I do have a couple of slides coming right now that are going to talk exactly about this subject. So let's get back to the slides and to my friend, the clicker. Now, just to wrap up the authoring experience in Excel I was talking about with Office Writer, you can use all the features of Excel. The experience is actually integrated in Excel, and what's, I think, the most interesting part is that most of the tasks you do from within Excel with Excel techniques. Here's how things work. And if you take a look to the slide, you will notice that we do have three distinct stages. First of all, you do the design. The design is done in Office. So this is something like, if you want, it's equivalent to the report designer, right? You do the design of the report. Once you do the design of the report, the RDL file is going to be published to the report server. And remember I said before, within the RDL file, you've also got a serialization of the Excel or the Word template that is going to be used to create the Office document by the Office Writer add-in. Now, once you published it to the reporting services, the third stage is the execution of the report, which means the generation of the Office document. Here's how it looks inside. And you can see here that there is a custom property embedded in the RDL file that stores the actual stream containing the Office file, the template file used to incorporate the data you get from reporting services. And this is why I said before, everything goes together, so it goes as a whole on the report server. Now, when you think about RDL, we've got multiple layers inside the RDL. We do have, and actually we still have, the classic RDL that is known to most RDL renderers. I mean, here we talk about the PDF renderer or the HTML renderer or whatever. So that still remains in place. But we have also that custom part of the RDL that is interpreted only by the Office Writer renderers. So basically, the entire idea behind the Office Writer technologies is using RDL as a vehicle for transporting layouts for Office documents. This is, if you want, the basic idea. And since we talked so far only about Excel, let's just take a look to how things work in Word. I'm going to close Excel. I'm going to open Word. Similarly to Excel, you will see that the ribbon of Excel 2007 includes the new reporting part, which pretty much offers you the same type of functionality, the same type of experience that you got in Excel. I'm not going to repeat now the creation of a document from scratch. I'm just going to show you a few of the predefined documents I do have on my machine so that you can better understand how all this technology works. Now I'm going to open here. I have the Word purchase order. And as you can see, going back to the reporting tab, we do have a couple of data sets, the order header query and the order detail query. These are two data sets that you can use to get the data. And then we have several regions in our document. We do have a few regions where we have just standalone values, namely in the header part, getting from one of the data sets. And then we have regions where we get repeating data. For example, this line is one that is going to be repeated. Now, if we take a look here to the way in which Office Writer works in Word, you can see that it is using a merged field. So basically, all those parts that you see in the Word document are nothing more than parameterized merge fields. And these are the ones that are used to find out where are those places, where are the placeholders for the information in the report. There is also another thing that is not visible right now on the report is this area, which is an area that is going to be repeated. Now, behind the scenes, to define repeating areas, Office Writer uses bookmarks. So everything that is comprised in a bookmark is an area that is going to be repeated based on the data extracted from a data set. Let's just close the edit mode and see how this looks when it's rendered. Going to reporting, going to preview, save it in Office Reports. It's already there because I've published it before. The publishing was successful. I have a parameter, of course, which is the sales order ID. I have to specify a certain sales order. And here you are. This is your sales order. This is a document that then you can take, you can edit, you can do whatever you want with it. It works absolutely similar. It works in the same manner as it works with Excel. I also have another one here that might be interesting. Let me just close this. Open again. And go to reporting. I have the combined product sales 2005. And this is one kind of interesting report that is designed to work, the RDL part is designed to work in both Excel and Word. So you can also think about these types of approaches, designing some format agnostic RDLs reports that you can also embed either in Excel or in Word. Now, I'm going to just run this. So that you can see the final result here. Okay, there might be a problem. And the problem is that most probably the data source was not set correctly in my RDL file. This is why Office Writer is basically now waiting to, okay, well, I have the multi-value parameter which are not yet supported. So we are going to be stuck with this. I'm not going to be able to show you the exact result for this. Now, another interesting side effect of the way in which Word functions here is getting back to those nasty letters that you have to send out. You can do with just a simple line break in Word, actually with a section break. You can print both the document and the envelope for that specific letter. Because if you use in the Office Writer template in the Word document, if you use a section break and change the page size, you automatically get all these elements for each of the customers done in your reporting services report. So what we basically get by using the Word part of authoring is a quite new set, a quite new class of reports, which are the document-based reports. And when I say document, I think more about the Word style of document, not the Excel style of document. And obviously, what we can do here is, based on the server capabilities, do the mass delivery of documents. Create Office documents, be they Word, be they Excel, it doesn't matter, and then basically delivering them through either SharePoint delivery channels or reporting service channels, or even custom delivery channels to all the destinations that we want to have. So what's the road ahead with this? Right now, the technology is supported on Office 2007, and you can buy it, you can use it directly from softartisans.com. However, I mentioned already, you won't have the ribbon UI. You're going to get stuck with the toolbar there. You won't be able to work with reporting services in SharePoint integrated mode. It doesn't support the SharePoint integrated mode yet, but you can use it. Now, the integrated part is going to be provided by Microsoft in a future release of SQL Server. It's most probably not going to be the 2008 release or the RTM of SQL Server 2008. It's going to be delivered somewhere at a later date. The reason for this is that, as you can see on my slide, the guys in Redmond are doing a whole lot of work to improve, to redesign, to integrate the user experience, of Office Writer into the mainstream of the user experience for Office documents. With that, we're getting closer to the final part of our session. 3 key elements which I just tried to present to you. Today, we have strong integration between Office and reporting services by means of reporting services integrated mode with SharePoint. In the coming months, we're going to have the new rendering extension for Word available in SQL Server 2008. And finally, after SQL Server 2008 ships, sometimes after the RTM, we're going also to have the Office Writer technology. With that, I thank you very much for staying to this session. I hope it was a useful session for all of you. We still have like 8 minutes of, sorry? No, we're done? Okay, we don't have any minutes for Q&A. Please don't forget to take a look at the resources and fill your evaluation forms. Thank you very much.